Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, RPA, all kinds of great things. We're talking about a specific example. Erica, I want to come up to you and ask you to highlight one example that you'd like to tell the listening audience.
Great, thank you. I think I'll go with the prototype that we did this past year that we partnered with the Defense Innovation Unit and the JAIC to accomplish. We're actually in the process now of deploying this into production. So one of the very first automations we built for RPA was actually an automation that was doing the data entry into an accounting system to clear unmatched transactions. And it was just the data entry piece. And even as we built that automation, which was saving a significant amount of time for the groups that were using it, we recognized there was still a lot of time and effort being spent on doing the research for identifying what is the corrective action that needs to happen. What is that entry that needs to occur in the accounting system to clear that unmatched? So that was always on our list from early days of circling back to say, hey, is there additional opportunity to use other technology to make a more robust, impactful solution for our agencies? So what we did is we used machine learning and a lot of the data that is already consumed on a regular basis in Advana, which is the DoD's advanced data analytic platform, to basically build models and mature models that can predict based on how prior unmatched transactions were cleared, how we can now clear new unmatched transactions that have come into the queue. So that was our initial use case. We've built that out, we've proven it, and now we're in the process of deploying that out to defense agencies in DoD. And we're excited to get that in the hands of the users. And one thing I will note, I know we've talked about this and other people have mentioned it, in that process, we're using RPA, we're also using machine learning. And what's really good about that is you can use the models and you can also build a human in the loop. So, where we're getting some people that maybe have never used this technology involved in this for the first time, there's, a comfort level and some confidence that needs to be built. So as we have the models predicting what are those corrective actions that then the RPA portion can take over and actually perform, you can build in, and we are building in human in the loop. So it would review to make sure that what's being proposed is in fact correct before it gets into the accounting system. So we're excited to get this one rolled out and put into production.
Sounds like a fantastic capabilities, convergence, blending of this technology to create this fantastic user experience. I'm sure the operators are really excited about that. Bob, how about at ServiceNow, when you look sort of across that globe, right, on the government sector, give us an example of a really cool, use case that you'd like to highlight.
Well, I think that really what we're hearing, and Erica highlighted it, Jim was right on point, as well as Greg, is how technology is enabling people to do things better, right? So we're conditioned in our everyday lives to have virtual assistants at our fingertips, and now even voice commands, right? So we interact with technology by speaking to it, and we get this response to answer a question or solve a problem that we have. The problem is we don't know where that data came from, right? So to Jim's earlier point, it's really critical as we start to integrate more information provided through technology that we understand that this is trusted data from trusted data sources. And we call that the source systems of record, right? So if you normalize from systems of record that are trusted within the computing environment into a normalized data repository, now you can have this virtual assistant capability where the trust factor for the solution that's being proposed to help the people make decisions or answer a question or take an action is a much higher level of confidence. And that's where I see a lot of adoption in governments around the world, because as all of our panelists have mentioned previously, the amount of data that's being processed now and the amount of information that's available is beyond human ability to not only catalog, but also search through to find a solution within an acceptable time frame, within a decision or a process or an activity within a process. So we have to rely on computers to help us do that. Virtual assistants provide that. That's what I referred to earlier as contextual information, but it has to be from trusted data sources. So that's a path we're on. We see that adoption rising every day in the curve, and we're really excited to help agencies achieve those outcomes.
Fantastic use case. Brett, how about at the Navy? You talked about a lot of stuff at the kickoff here. Give us an example of one program you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, Luke. So yeah, I mentioned MQ-25 and the recent successes of the unmanned refueling drone off the aircraft carrier, the Task Force 59, the Middle East Unmanned AI Task Force.
Which is phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah, I know. It's great. It's really exciting. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give you a specific example, another specific example, and then go general, because we talked about the fundamentals and what we need to do at a base level. The specific example I want to give is our Navy SEALs, our special operators. They're everybody knows what they do. I can't go into a lot of specifics. I'll just say that with regard to the development application of AI, I think the typical American taxpayer would be surprised and proud of what they've been doing over the last 2 to 3 years. They are putting it to use in a very exciting in a way that makes me, as the Chief AI Officer of the Navy, very proud. In general, and this is another effort I'm really proud of because it extends across the whole service, and it's really a reaction to the recent final report of the National Security Commission on AI, which put the whole Department of Defense on a very short game clock, really. Recommended to the President and Congress that the department be AI enabled by 2025. So there's a bit of there's urgency, right? If you crack that report open, it's huge. It's like 800 pages, 100 recommendations. If you look at it in total for the services, what it says is you have some work to do in your basic service responsibilities: man, train, and equip, to be a more effective player on the AI field. And so one of the things we're doing in the Navy to address that and to fuel our speed to that goal of 2025, we are establishing AI task forces at each of our type commanders. What I mean by that is, our undersea warfare, surface warfare, aviation, special operations, and information. We are establishing task forces that address both the technologic side and the practice side. So the folks within each one of those organizations do what I call the calculus correctly, determining whether a problem can be improved with AI or not, and if it can, to develop the stack, and then work the stack through their given mission area. Like Greg said, AI is a general purpose technology, but in its application, it has to be tailored and customized to a problem specific and context dependent situation. The algorithm I build or develop for a submariner is very different from the one I would build for a jet pilot. Different operating environments, different velocities, different data, different transport. The stack is different, essentially. So it's critical that we get each of those folks in those given mission areas to understand what AI is, what its potential is, and then how you craft it to answer their needs and problems. So that entire service approach to tackling both technology and practice is one thing it's come a long way over the last year. We now have one of those task forces at each of our type commanders, and they're making terrific progress. And the Task Force 59 is a slightly different animal, but again, I see it as growth, and growth in a good way, into a more, as Greg said, pointing into the spear type of direction. But it all needs to start at that fundamental level: man, train, equip across the service.
Sounds like you're getting very laser focused. Well, we're going to wrap it up with a question that I love to ask, but it always means it's towards the end of the show here. And this is paint a picture of the future. Bob, we're going to start with you at service now. You're talking to global entities, government entities across the planet. What's the demand signal out there? What's sort of in the hopper in regards to ServiceNow? What's it going to look like in 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, Luke, it's probably one of the best questions I get asked, and I really enjoy looking into the strategic future of government agencies globally. And what I see happening is this capability to bring into a common computing environment the ability for the information to be shared amongst multiple applications across an enterprise. The great thing that we're doing to help agencies of ServiceNow is that's a native capability out of the box. Artificial intelligence, supervised machine learning, virtual assistant for each application, whether it's native or developed on the platform, which really expands the horizons of how that technology is available, already integrated. But really where we're driving and what I see, Luke, is super exciting because, and I've termed it anticipatory government, but we've kind of talked about it in other areas. I know Henry mentioned it, and Jim and Greg, is that avoiding outages, collecting data to understand what's happening against what has happened to anticipate an outage or a failure or a need or a requirement allows you to pick through the metadata that we have in our repositories to understand and accurately predict the future and have that capability ready to avoid an outage, avoid a bad situation, or very quickly respond to that. And I refer to that in the business sense of providing this digital experience that I mentioned previously as anticipatory government. So the technology actually offers recommendations based upon historical data that allows us to get ahead of the curve and anticipate the need before it's actually realized. That's super exciting. And when you couple that with hyper-personalized experiences based upon your persona, your job, your responsibilities, now you've got a future that's very exciting, where technology is truly in service of people, and we've elevated the performance of every person, regardless of their role, interacting with that technology. Super exciting time to be part of technology, Luke, and I'm glad to be here talking about it with this panel.
I'd love to see the convergence of the government services with the use of this technology. Henry, how about over at Cloudera? What's it going to look like in a couple of years?
It's funny. There's a quote came from a data scientist out of Strata, and it was like, it took me 3 weeks to develop a model, but it's been 11 months and it's still not deployed in production. And there's a couple of, there's a couple of different production.
Aren't we beyond that at this point?
Unfortunately not. There's a couple of different surveys out there. One showed that 35%, only 35% of models are making it to production. Another showed only 20% were making it to production. Which is those are really hard numbers, right? So what does it take to actually make machine learning AI, get into production? And at Cloudera, that's some of the things that we are intimately concerned about, right? How do you consider the entire data lifecycle, everything from ingest, data engineering, data warehousing, making sure that it's available, then the actual machine learning data science process, and then serving it out and actually doing something with it, right? That is understanding that entire life cycle, making sure that you're also doing that in a secure and governed way, absolutely critical. So that's the things that we're focused on. And I see that many different agencies are also considering those same issues. They're seeing the same science projects that are failing, and how do we actually get things out of science projects and actually into production to make it a normal part of our process. And I think a lot of the things that you heard here today are that entire pathway is where that's going, is to making this just a normal part of what we do and actually getting things off the ground and into production and to be successful.
No doubt every federal entity looks forward to that. Jim, how about over at Fortinet? What's it going to look like in a couple of years?
So Luke, I'm going to give you two quick ones, one cybersecurity and one broader. And one of the key challenges we face in cybersecurity is the attack surface, the sheer size and complexity of our connections, the fact that we don't know what we have. And if you make architectural decisions to instrument that surface, and the instrumentation are both sensors, and AI can help you make sense of what you're seeing to know what's normal, what's abnormal, and what's abnormal and just weird from abnormal and malicious. And the instrumentation are also controls you can respond to things in real time. So you're turning your biggest liability, the sheer size and complexity of your enterprise, into an advantage. I'm a former intelligence guy. You're making it into a big integrated collection and response platform. And that's something that actually it changes the tipping point, takes the advantage away from the attacker. And second, you've talked about convergence, Luke. We're headed in a direction where we've moved from being in the office to home, and now we're talking about a hybrid future. But the reality is we want to start enabling and securing connections between the users and the computing resources and the data, regardless of where they are. That kind of smart, adaptive networking is only going to fundamentally work when you can harness AI to make it effective.
Absolutely. And speaking of that convergence, Erica, I suspect that you've got quite a pipeline over there, a lot of activity in the hopper. What's it going to look like in a couple of years as far as what capabilities you'll be rolling out there?
We do. We've got a lot of good things in the pipeline. I think three things I'm most excited to see in the coming year or three. I think one is removing additional barriers that we can. So I mentioned earlier, we have a shared service platform, and that it helps eliminate some of the barriers of entry for people getting started with things like RPA. We know there's still more. So what can we do there as a shared service to eliminate some of those additional challenges? One of the things that we've recently done is we've recently deployed an unattended RPA infrastructure that, again, is available for other groups to use. But we also want to look into potentially piloting, can we offer virtual workspaces within the Advana environment to do both development and runtime. So one of the challenges we still see with the groups that are connecting to various platforms is, do they have their own virtual environments today? So that's a challenge that folks are facing, and looking across the different groups that partner with us, how could we potentially offer and help address some of those issues that we're seeing? So we have a couple of things in the works there. I'm sure there will be more, but I'm excited most about the unattended, as well as potential opportunities to offer virtual environments. I think the second area is really just expanding and getting more use cases that are going beyond RPA. What can we do with machine learning in conjunction with RPA, AI, but potentially even getting beyond RPA? Maybe we have some use cases that don't have any RPA components. So I think there, again, we'll be kind of building that inventory, and hopefully we'll be having more pilots, more deployments of solutions that expand into intelligent automation and AI. And then the third area, and I know we've touched on this, a number of folks have touched on this, is really kind of growing the inherent capability within our workforce. So industry partners are always super critical. They're going to remain very important. But as we really adopt and embrace emerging technology, how do we ingrain that in our government base? And that's in our culture as well as in our workforce, and getting people within the government space trained and comfortable developing this right now. I see a lot of in this space now where we've got a pretty heavy reliance on contractors, but I think as we embrace this technology across the department in DoD, there's going to be further adoption, and again, just ingraining that within our workforce and getting folks trained and comfortable with that.
Sounds fantastic, and you hear that often, so good on you. Brett, how about over to Department of Navy? Are we going to see an autonomous, F-35 landing on an aircraft carrier in 2 to 3 years? Where does it end? Where does it start?
Probably, yeah. You probably won't see that in 2 to 3 years, but I think it's important looking at the future, we talk about where we've been, where we are now, right, as a base. So, the Navy's been involved in AI for decades, since the 50s, and the inception of the discipline. We established a Navy Center for Applied Research in AI at the Naval Research Lab, 1981, and we've been very active. But most of the work that's resulted still remains, as Henry said, it's in R&D spaces or in the lab, and we need to move. So one priority for us in the next 2 to 3 years is to move a lot of that into the field. We have to start getting used to the technology, I think increased exposure will help build trust and confidence. It's one of the ways we tackle that. So that's a priority for us, is taking that good work and moving it to the field. And that, putting the 2 to 3, year window, for me, it has a technologic side and a cultural side, as Erica was talking about. On the technology side, for us, a lot of what that means about moving from the lab to the fleet is about edge AI. So it's our intent to not only upgrade our kit, our technology, but our practices to move AI, impactful AI, to the edge. And for us, that would be a ship, an aircraft, or a Navy SEAL, right? So in the next 2 to 3 years, I hope to see us make significant progress on both the technology side and the practice side of doing that. On the cultural side, as Erica mentioned, the people are so critical to this. There's a lot of talk of it when you talk about AI, it's technology, but one of the reasons AI is hard and difficult and expensive today is because of the expertise required right now. And upskilling our sailors and Marines is one of our highest priorities right now. So I hope to see progress at the whole naval education enterprise, the Navy Community College, the Naval Academy, the Naval Postgrad School, and the Naval War College, in conjunction and concert with our government partners and academia. We have strong relationships right now with a lot of what we call the AI academic club, the Stanford, MIT, Carnegie Mellon. But we hope to grow that and knit that into a cohesive fabric that will elevate our folks organically, right? And make them better equip them to do, again, the AI calculus, right? Good problem to AI matching and working through the stack, but as well as adopting those digital practices that I think are so critical and important to effective AI development and application.
Sounds super exciting, and we're all looking forward to that. Sanjay, how about a Department of Labor? You're laying that foundation down, a lot of hard work going on there. 2 to 3 years from now, what's it going to look like?
So I think building off some of the great comments that have already been discussed, I mean, we're going to be more AI and data ready. And I think that whole culture change piece is super critical. And so the way I look at it is, how do we make sure that the agency is much more attuned to how we leverage the artificial intelligence? I think data is really key also. So we need some level of maturity there as well to really be able to make a reality the possibilities here. I mean, DOL has a pretty exceptional mission of ensuring the welfare of our job seekers, enabling workers, protecting benefits and rights of workers, retiring with dignity. So there's an incredible number of areas that we could speed the eligibility determinations, free up some backlogs, really drive value and what the agency is doing. And I think everybody experiences this future of we're asked to do more with less. And that every agency I've worked at, it seems that there are more requirements coming from Congress, more need to speed things out. And there's not necessarily the same level of funding and staffing to make that happen. So that's why we're really focused on that data infrastructure. And that starts with not only our AI ML capabilities, but also with our data foundation. And so you've got faulty data, you have faulty decisions. You've got lack of quality data, you have lack of quality decisions. So we've kind of got a parallel process that in the next couple of years, we hope will catch up to one another. One is stronger, better quality data and structured data, and then how it's going to be leveraged around our AI ML capabilities. And that foundation not only matches up with the culture change and possibilities, but then also our technical capabilities to make that happen. So we'll be looking at our foundational work. We'll be looking at how data and AI ML are going to jointly be synced and how we build up that infrastructure. And then I think we want to look at our readiness. Where are we at today? How are we continually improving not just what we're technically doing, but the conversations around it, our subcomponents, considerations, and thinking around the possibilities, and that maturity level is continuing to grow along with the technology.
That more with less concept. I know Erica double tapped on that as well. It's exciting, and I'm sure the entire user population very anxious to see that happen and be fully realized. Greg, take us home from the Jake's perspective, maybe two dimensions, the Jake and sort of what you see there from 2 to 3 years, maybe AI in general across the federal service. What's it look like in a couple of years?
I think the main thing that you're going to see is we're evolving from an era in which AI is difficult to implement. It requires a great deal of genius level expertise. And we're moving from that era into which an AI is sort of an expected aspect of your daily life, whether that's in the business processes in the business enterprise of the Department of Defense, or whether that's actually in warfighting operations. So to take an example from each of those domains, on the business side of the equation, the budget and financial and contracting data of the Department of Defense looks like these, phone book thick reports. And that is what passes for data. And so if you want to understand and analyze that data, you have to read hundreds or thousands of pages of documents. In some cases, such as the contracting enterprise, millions of documents. And so we actually partnered, and just by total coincidence, I've partnered with the two organizations on this call, the Navy and Advana, to create a new capability that uses machine learning and natural language processing, which is a subdomain of that, where we're going to be analyzing the budget data of the DoD and the contracting data of the DoD, so that you can actually sort of move from a report that you have to read to a cloud-enabled application that you can query and search from. So for instance, you could reach into the 60 million contracting documents, right, that the Department of Defense has executed over the past decade or so. And you could say, show me all of the contracts that look like this one. I mean, that is a very different relationship between information that a typical analyst or a typical user will have in the future from what they have today. And not only will this performance be incredible, but it will be continually updated. In working with the Advana team, I have been amazed, right? And I say, oh, I need the system to be able to do this, right? This system is still in development. I need the system to be able to do this. I need it to have this feature. And they come back to me the next day, the next week, and it's already upgraded to be, what we need the system to do. That is a totally different relationship that DoD organizations used to have with the creation of software-enabled technology. These used to be years-long development efforts, but we're totally revamping our data infrastructure. We're totally revamping our software development infrastructure so that it can respond at the speed of mission need. Now, what I was just talking to you was about the business operations side of the Department of Defense, but our mission is to deter wars and, if necessary, to fight and win those wars. And artificial intelligence will have an equal, if not greater impact, as Brett and I have been saying, at the pointy end of the spear. And there I would urge you to think about the evolution that we've seen in e-commerce, right? The speed at which you can just wish for something and it appears on your doorstep, or the change in taxis to app-based ride-sharing services. Mm-hmm. These are all developments in the commercial technology sphere that are underwritten at every stage through artificial intelligence and machine learning. That is the key step that has enabled these types of services. And what I want is for our warfighters to have capabilities every bit as effective, every bit as high performing, and constantly evolving and getting better, not on a time frame of years, but on a time frame of days or weeks. That's what they deserve, and that's what America's national security needs. And I think the department is moving towards being an AI-enabled enterprise and a professionalized AI enterprise, where it's not a novelty, it's something that we're good at, it's something we do all the time.
Greg, you've painted a very inspiring future, and we really appreciate you closing us out with that. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on this program. I'd like to thank our sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make this program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience out there that tune into us every month. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.